They say that they're basically legal and above board, and Chris joins us. So that they're doing it all legally, Chris.
Well, I mean, maybe their standards are set too low for some of us to start with, but even if they are doing it legally, what we can see is abuse of animals for entertainment. You know, if I were a crocodile, if I were a snake, if I were a toad, I wouldn't want to be enclosed in a tank with a giggling or gurning celebrity just to make people laugh. We put all of this stuff behind us, Germany, in this country. We're a nation of animal lovers. We've got rid of circuses. We've got rid of bear baiting, cockfighting, dog fighting. You know, we're doing everything we can to make sure that we uphold the very highest standards of animal welfare and critically, whether it's legal or not, respect for those creatures. We need to engender a respect for all life, because it won't have escaped yourself and your viewers that we're in the midst of a biodiversity crisis. We're losing millions of species potentially on our planet down to our actions, and we need to reverse that.
I was looking at the history of it. You're right, they've definitely done bad things in the past, Chris. In 2009, there was actually police action after the RSPCA in Australia said that a rat had been killed and eaten. Fern McCann ate a live water spider. There was a story about a crocodile having its mouth taped shut. But has it not improved?
No, I don't think it has improved. Basically, they have changed the bush tucker 2019. If you'll remember, before that, they were eating live animals. Now they're eating dead animals, but the message is the same. What the animals are being used for is amusement. It's not for engagement or education, which might lead to proactive conservation. It's simply there for amusement. So whether they're dead or not makes little difference. They're stereotyping these animals. The animals that they put in the pizza, things like cockroaches and mealworms, are designed to be repugnant to people, but they're not repugnant. They're essential components of ecosystems which we rely on all around the world. And unless people like myself can engender that respect for life, it makes it very difficult for me to call upon a broader public who aren't as fanatically as interested as I am, perhaps who don't have their finger on the pulse of all of these serious declines, but to help us conserve these species. It's really important that we don't reinforce stereotypes that snakes and rats and cockroaches and bugs are horrible animals. They're not. They're critically important.
Assuming this is part of it, Chris, do you want I'm a Celeb shut down?
No, I don't. Not at all. It's a highly entertaining programme. It's enormously popular. It's critical for ITV when it comes to raising revenue. Lots of people are employed on that programme. I work in the television industry some of the time, so I'm not trying to do people out of jobs here. I'm asking them to exercise their imagination, something that they're very good at ITV when it comes to entertainment programmes, to replace the animals with trials which are amusing for people, but don't involve cruelty and exploitation and unnecessary stereotyping of these creatures.
Let me just bring it, before I come back to you, Chris, let's bring in Graham Taylor, who's in the studio. What do you think of that?
Well, Jeremy, I was going to argue against Chris Packham. I was going to actually say, what a load of rubbish, why is he wasting his time? But since I've heard his explanation as to why he doesn't want this to happen, I'm now actually won over, Chris, by what you've said. I think that these animals are being, I can see where you're coming from. There is exploitation.
A lot of this is eating.
This is where Chris and I differ. Very soon, the world is going to be eating more insects than meat, because you can get more protein out of insects than you can out of red meat. And we will be going down that path. Already, if you can go to supermarkets, you can buy food made from insects, and it's very appealing food and actually quite tasty and a lot better for us than eating red meat. But the use of live animals, and especially if they're going to be putting with Nigel Farage, it is quite. I can see now what he's saying. That is quite cruel.
Okay,
those animals are being.
Jemma, you agree with Chris as well?
Yeah, I agree completely. I think formats can get tired and they need to be reinvented, and things change. And as Chris said, if they just invented trials that didn't involve animals, it'd still be the same show it is today.
Let's see. Anne is in West Yorkshire. What would you like to ask Chris Packham, Anne?
Oh, hi everyone. And first of all, well done to Chris Packham. I'm a big fan. So, Jeremy, I've been on your show before when Nicola McLean was a panellist who had just been on your show using live creatures for sick fun, pleasure and entertainment. And I cannot understand how it can be justified, this kind of cruelty. Nicola tried to justify it by saying we are all animals and we should eat every part of the eyeballs, testicles and everything. And if that is the case, then maybe Nicola wants to eat her pet if it passes away, or maybe a member of her family if we're all animals. Right.
Well, I think we wouldn't be going towards cannibalism at this stage, I don't think. But why not, given that, restaurants serve meat and restaurants serve things that have been killed in the wild, why not have people eating them on television if they're already dead? I don't get the logic of this.
Well, I'm a vegan, so I don't eat animals anyway.
Okay.
I started off as a meat eater, vegetarian, then vegan, and I'm very, very healthy. But the reason I've rung in as well is because I rang up a couple of days ago. I didn't get on air, but you were showing where Nigel Farage was showing his backside, and I rang up to say you need to talk more about the animal cruelty.
Well, there we are. There we are. We must have heard you in the ether. I suppose, Chris, if you're looking at I'm a Celeb and it's the journey it's been on, you put it under pressure over the years, and for sure they've changed, right? They have definitely stopped doing things where somebody, Scarlett Moffat had to eat a live beetle in 2016. They wouldn't do that now. So aren't we just in a situation, you don't like them eating dead things, but we do that all the time anyway?
No, it's about the framing, Jeremy. You're absolutely right about that insect protein. We know we can't eat as much meat that we're producing in the world now. Globally, we've got to cut back for environmental reasons. No ambiguity about that whatsoever. We're exploring other avenues, and insect protein is one of those. But it's about the way it's framed. The insects are put in the pizzas because people are taught to think that insects are disgusting, repugnant creatures. If they were ground up, if that protein were ground up and simply mixed in, you couldn't see them, the gag wouldn't work. They're still being exploited, even though they're dead. And critically, as I say, they're reinforcing these false steps that these animals are, as I say, repugnant and unpleasant when they're not. They're absolutely essential to our species' survival on this planet. And a lot of us spend a lot of our time trying to, bring that message to the public so that when there are serious conservation concerns, we can rattle our tins and ask for their support. And we can't do that if these animals are being constantly abused, ridiculed and exploited solely for entertainment. If those insects were being put in there and they were talking about animal protein and they were talking about industrial farming and cutting back on the amount of meat, it would be a very different story. But that's not the case, is it?
Your letter was addressed to Ant and Dec, and it's for you, I know it's a bit personal to try and convince them personally that the two of them are making a mistake. So what is your direct message to Ant and Dec?
Well, look, Jeremy, both you and I know that whether we like it or not, if we are presenting a programme, we are part of the flagship brand of that programme. This is the Jeremy Vine show. When I'm working for wildlife programmes as a presenter, I'm a figurehead for that programme. And I must do everything I can to make sure that the integrity, the credibility of that programme, the ethics and the morals are intact. And I know you do this yourself. So I'm only asking Ant and Dec because they do have a powerful voice. They're highly respected television presenters with a long history, and they have an enormous following of fans. They could do something really impressive here and exercise that power within ITV and say, look, we love your programme, we'd like to continue working on it, but can we please get rid of these animal-based trials? And they have, I believe, the power to exercise that voice. And it's time for them to stand up and be counted at a time when we all have to do so if we want a healthy, sustainable future for our children and grandchildren.
Some social media messages for you. Brian on Facebook says, Chris is just having a moan because he's not been offered a large wedge of cash to appear on the show. Steve on Facebook says, the animals are not harmed and are well looked after by trained people. This is nothing to worry about.
Oh.
Go on, deep breath.
Well, frankly, I mean, I just saw that clip. Were those cockroaches being well looked after? Were the green ants being well looked after? When you see the toads in the enclosures, don't tell me these animals aren't stressed, and don't tell me they're not being harmed. We can't make those artificial judgments. People wouldn't be doing it with kittens and puppies, would they? Because they're our companion animals. We've got to break down this disconnect between the way that we partition our views of animals based on a pretext that they're farm animals. Okay, that means we can eat them. They're companion animals. Oh, we can't possibly eat those. And then they're exotic animals. Oh, we can gorp at those in a zoo then. And all of this is nonsense. Look at these toads here.
Yeah. Are they the bearded
put
dragons?
yourself in the sticky skin of a toad. Would you be happy in that tank?
No, those toads that look distressed.
I watched 5 minutes of Blue Planet the other day where a tree hopper insect was communicating with bees that came in, flew in to protect her babies from other insects, and then, by way of thank you, she basically secreted some syrup for them to drink. I was like, it blew my mind, Chris. I learnt so much just from that 5 minutes of how sentient and intelligent they are.
Have you been asked to be on it, by the way, Chris? I should ask you.
I think after the raft of letters that I've written over the years, I would probably be the last on the list to be invited to the jungle. But here's one thing. If they dropped those trials and if they put in a role for someone who would communicate with their participants the importance of these animals and, frankly, how extraordinarily lucky they are to be spending time in a rainforest, a place where many people never have the fortune to visit, which is full of life, then, they need someone like me to be there as an educator, to engage people with these animals and talk about how important they are. And wouldn't that be a fantastic change for ITV on a flagship programme like this with an audience of millions?
Jerry in Dorset, you can ask Chris a question.
Morning, Jeremy.
Hi.
Yeah, what I was going to ask Chris then, is it natural for teams of photographers and wildlife experts hounding animals that are in their natural environment day and night just to show us pictures at home?
Well, I can assure you that on all of the programmes that are on, we put the health and well-being of the animal absolutely at the forefront, and we will do nothing to disturb it, harm it, interrupt its ecology or anything else. We apply our skills in that arena with the utmost sensitivity, and that is absolutely critical to our industry, and there's no doubt about that. And we're aided by the fact, of course, that in recent times we have access to increasingly affordable, unobtrusive, tiny cameras which we're able to use to film these animals, and we as humans don't even get anywhere near them. We now see drones being used sensitively. We see remote cameras which are on little buggies which we can get into position. The animals never know that we are there.
All right, Jerry, thanks for your call. Sheila in Surrey, what would you like to ask Chris?
Well, I'm with Chris on this. We are destroying our flora and fauna at a rapid rate. And at this rate, I don't know what will be left for the future for our children and grandchildren.
Can we not, it's a 2-week show, can we not allow ourselves, Sheila, to have a little 2-week moment of entertainment? All right?
I think it's a stupid show. I think adults behaving like kids is absolutely stupid. And they look stupid too.
Graham, I think you probably agree with her.
I do. It's now that I've heard Chris, animals are really close to my heart. I'm very blessed to have a very large garden, and it's now been converted into an animal sanctuary. We've just let it grow wild, an acres garden growing wild. And over the last 2 years, the diversity of wildlife, we have raptors, we have a peregrine falcon, we have a sparrowhawk, we have hedgehogs, hundreds of hedgehogs, we have all sorts of things. And to see that, and then to see creatures abused like this, I didn't make that connect at first. Okay. And now I've heard Chris, there is a connect. Let's just stop the programme.
Preaching to the choir. Sheila, thank you. Valerie in East Yorkshire, what would you like to say?
Yeah, it just annoys me so much about why are people watching it if you don't like the cruelty to animals? What cruelty to animals is there? And Mr. Peckham, I think he just wants his 20 seconds of fame on the TV.
Oh, no.
I am a farmer's. Yes, you do. I'm a farmer's wife. I look after animals. I have nothing against people being vegetarians, people doing this, but why watch the thing on the TV if you don't like it? It does my head in.
Well, let Chris answer.
Standing there, smiling his head off. What kind of car do you drive? Is it a big fancy car? Is it a diesel? Is it this?
We've got to get to the end of the question, Valerie. Okay, Val.
Why?
Chris.
Okay, simple answer to the car question. For the last 4 years, I've had the privilege of driving an electric car. I would never go back to a petrol or diesel that a replacement at this point. It's not the answer in the grand scheme of things, but it's a good alternative at the moment to things which are still pumping out fossil fuels. So there's one thing. The second thing is, it doesn't matter whether I watch it or not. It's going on. And an audience of 7 million other people are watching it. And they're reinforcing the fact that it's apparently okay to abuse these animals. Now, if you are a farmer's wife, there are very strict regulations about the way that you look after the animals on your farm. And there should be, and I hope that you uphold them. And what I'm saying is that the regulations when it comes to using the animals, not for the food that you're producing your animals, but simply for people's amusement, are not set
What about
high
that,
enough.
Valerie? I'm a Celeb is the opposite of what you're doing on your farm.
If you don't like it, why watch the thing on the TV?
That's not the point.
No, but he's angry about what goes on it, whether or not he watches it. That's the issue, Val.
Yeah, but other people are watching it and they're complaining. Switch the thing off if you don't want to watch it.
Gemma.
Well, whether you agree with Chris or not, what I will say is thank you, Chris, because for as long as I've been watching telly, you've been trying to stick up for the environment and animals and conservation. So I know this has nothing to do with 20 minutes of fame. It's because you're passionate about nature. So that's just a silly accusation.
OK. Listen, Chris, thank you so much for joining us on the show. And nice to see you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Jeremy.
Out in the wild.
Nice
Thank
to see
you.
Look after yourself.
And you take
top
care.
work from Graham there. I love the fact that you've rewilded your garden and you've got your raptors and your hedgehog.
There we are, Graham.
Exactly what we want to hear. Brilliant.
I've got 6 baby hedgehogs in the house at the moment, surviving through winter, being fed every day, twice a day.
Brilliant. Thank you
What
very
a
much.
bloke.
Converted by the Packham. All right. I suppose I should say again, ITV say I'm a Celeb complies with all of Australia's laws regarding animals.